Hello, scholars. My name is Ira McIntosh, and this is Hypothesis. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the office. It's a new day, it's a new episode, and I am so ready to share this one with you. Honestly, this was a topic that I've never really considered much. We are going to talk about cooperative businesses. As someone who grew up in the Pacific Northwest, I grew up just north of Seattle. I talk about this in the episode, but I grew up with this kind of business. I grew up with co-op grocery stores and REI and a lot of businesses that pretended to be cooperative stores. So in this episode, we talk a little bit about what is a cooperative, and my guest really explains the philosophy behind this kind of business, and what led her to studying these topics. We talk about rising above generational trauma and how going back to school at a later point in her life helped my guests see through some of the kind of unnecessary things that academia puts us through sometimes, and how being a non-traditional student just let her experience academia in a new way. We also talk about how non-traditional business structures can benefit everyone, and how the government, just by supporting some of these non-traditional business types, can then support the entire economy. Today's guest is Dr. Angelina Wagner. Dr. Angelina Wagner is a doctor of business administration whose research explores how national policies shape the longevity and resilience of cooperative businesses in Spain, Italy, and the United States. A passionate advocate for economic democracy, Dr. Wagner is driven by the belief that people-centered business models can challenge inequality and build stronger communities. Her journey from unconventional beginnings to academic achievement fuels her commitment to reimagining systems that prioritize people over profit. When she's not analyzing cooperative frameworks, she's envisioning a more equitable entertainment industry, one where creativity is nurtured, labor is valued, and success is shared. I'm so excited to have Dr. Wagner on the podcast today, and I really hope our conversation encourages those of you who are listening who maybe think that it's past time when you could re-enter academia, or are unsure if it's appropriate for you to go on for a higher degree at this moment. So take this episode as encouragement, that whatever your circumstances, if you want to do anything, it's never too late. And non-traditional ways of doing things can be just as important, if not better in some ways, than the traditional ways of doing them. Let's listen to the episode. Yeah, podcasting is not a scary thing whatsoever, but I'm so glad that I get to be your first podcast. That's exciting.
So excited. I saw that message come through on TikTok and I was just like, "Me? Okay."
I mean, yeah, I just was just like, you know what? I want to start doing this. And you had such a wonderful presence on your TikTok, and um you're so knowledgeable and personable that I was just like, I need to talk to you. So um
Well, that's really
bef-
wonderful. I feel pretty spicy.
and for anyone listening, and specifically for those watching, there was a caveat when we started recording. You may see the forms of children and or animals running behind my wonderful guest, but you know, we take life as it comes, and academics are not always in an office hidden by themselves. So Um, cool. So at the very top, could you tell me a little bit about like your academic history and how you came to doing a doctorate and um what where this journey came from for you?
Um, okay, it's a long story, so I'm gonna make it a little shorter for you.
Okay.
I started school in its entirety when I was 16 years old. My birth mom, I'm from Alaska. I'm mixed race, Black, Native, and white. And growing up in the 90s in Alaska, like if you were Black, you were just kind of like an outcast. So I wasn't allowed to play with the Native kids. I wasn't allowed to play with the white kids. I didn't know any other Black people because, again, they were outcasts. And my birth mother solely had me to piss off my grandmother. And I regretted it because people treated her differently for having a Black child. And um, she wasn't someone that was stable or on her feet, so we constantly were in and out of foster care. And she absolutely loved my two older siblings because they were mostly Native compared to the rest of us. And she got tired of them being taken away. And in Alaska, you can homeschool your children without showing proof to the state. So she just
Mm.
pulled us all out of school. And my brother had no desire to learn. And she said that a Black girl could not be smarter than a Native boy. So she didn't let me learn. And I ran away once when I was 14 and she got me back. I ran away again when I was 15 and never went back. The family that I moved in with, they were Christian and they homeschooled their children. So the mom just poured as much into me as she could until I could be proficient enough to do online school. And I finished my high school diploma when I was 21. And going through your adolescence, not being able to read or write or understand basic math makes you feel like an outsider, like on top of my ethnic background. So a desire for knowledge was always there. And as soon as I could achieve that, I really didn't stop. So I finished high school. I thought that was going to be a lot harder because everyone makes it sound like it was hard, and it wasn't. People in my life convinced me that, oh, they just went easy on you because of your backstory. So then it gave me a complex of like imposter syndrome. So I went to school for acting, um, and that lasted a year. The teacher that I had was like, oh no, you don't have a face for acting. You should do writing because you're really good at story development and little details. So I shifted gears and I got my bachelor's in creative writing for entertainment. And then that was easy. And I thought that would be hard because I learned how to write and read at such a late age that I was like, they're just being nice to me again. So I was bored one day and I was like, what does it take to get your master's? And I went and got my master's because, again, I thought it was going to be hard. And again, it was easy. So my master's is in entertainment business. And I remember sitting after having my youngest child and thinking, like, I have a bachelor's, I have a master's, I finished high school. I don't feel like a grown up. I don't feel like someone who has accomplished anything. I feel like all of this is fake and they were just being nice to me. And I was like, but you can't fake a doctorate. So I asked my husband, I was like, if I look into this, would you support it? And he was just like, I'll support anything you do. And I was like, okay. And it was after COVID, and an article came out, and I can't remember his name, but he's based out of Washington, where he made sure that all of his employees got $70,000 a year. And businesses around the world were like, oh no, your business is going to tank. And it's a thriving business. And he makes sure that everyone, bare minimum, makes $70,000. And I was like, that's the kind of business that every business should be like. And someone was just like, well, no, those don't do well. And then I went to a store that was a cooperative and I was like, what is this? And learned about cooperatives. And I was like, why don't we have more of these where people actually have democratic say in the business? Because we had record profits during COVID. Why are people getting laid off like they're not making record profits? And so I looked into cooperatives and then I was like, okay, if I'm going to go for a doctorate, it needs to be something that is beneficial to the greater population and not just another notch on my belt. I have to help people in some way. And I went for my doctorate and it was hard. And I'm happy about that.
You finally had tangible evidence that no, they were not being easy on me.
Yes. I mean, I have a 3.8 GPA, and the only reason why it's not a 4.0 is because I was in school during 2 pregnancies and I had severe morning sickness. So sometimes I was just like, as long as I get a C, I'm fine. But
A
this one was,
3.8 is incredible though. Like it's nothing to sniff at.
oh, thanks. I'm an overachiever, but I definitely just wanted to, knowing that it was hard, the each like chapter of it was hard. Like the research part, writing every like paper and reading all of the different articles. I have so many articles saved that has nothing to do with my dissertation, but was just interesting. And I was like, I'll come back later to read you. And then like getting dinged because my academic voice wasn't as strong as they wanted it to be. I was just like, oh, I'm not as amazing as I thought I was, and I have to improve. So I improved that. And then the research part was like gathering the data was brutal because I had like a really good pacing. The school that I went to has a very structured like timeline for your dissertation, and I was hell bent on finishing before um, the traditional one because you have 4 12-week courses, and then each course, if you don't finish the chapter that you're supposed to, they give an additional 3 8-week courses. And I remember one of my advisors saying, no one's been able to finish this program with just going straight through the 4 courses. They always need like the supplemental courses. And I was like, bet. I finished it in three classes, technically, 1 week into the 4th class when I did my defense. And
That's
I was
incredible.
like really excited about it, but I was trying to get it done in 3 classes. So I like pushing through, waiting for responses from people was brutal because everything else I was just like, I have nothing else to write. I could like go through and like re-edit again, but I've done that like 100 times now. And so I would just check my email every 10 minutes. Did anybody respond yet? And then I had to like shift scope because the new regime that's in office cut a bunch of programs that were linked to the research that I needed. So it was no longer available to me. And so then I got like approved from the IRB board, and I had to like um, reapply so that I could expand my pool. And then it was the defense. And I was just like, I'm gonna fail this. This is this is gonna be the one. They're gonna ask me a question and my mind is gonna go blank and they're gonna be like, you are not gonna be a doctor. And then I did it and they came back on and they said, Dr. Wagner, and I was like, okay, I was somebody. I still don't feel like a grown up, but I did something hard and I proved to myself that I'm not an imposter. That
Yeah.
was longer than shorter. I'm sorry.
No, that's I think it's an important story to tell because I don't think we hear enough from people who aren't privileged going into academia. I think that privileged coming from a long family. I mean, my family, I would be the third generation of doctoral student. And I think there's a lot of those stories out there of families that it's just that's what they do, and there's that support from birth all the way through. And I think it's important to hear those stories from people who don't have that same kind of support all the way through, especially when you're coming in halfway through high school trying to catch up for that much time. That's hard. That's really hard. And then to come out on the other side and say that you have a doctorate is crazy impressive. And a doctorate with a 3.8 GPA, that's incredibly impressive.
Thank you. I don't always feel impressive. I
I, I
I
mean, I think
I still feel
that's
like a
the
little
curse
kid,
of the
but thank
academic.
you.
I
It
mean, that's the
is.
curse of the academic. We are all overachievers. I mean, I just graduated with my master's, and I graduated with a 3.81 GPA, and I had to like back up and be like, no, this is you're good.
Be proud of
Breathe.
yourself. This is good.
Yeah, you finished. It's over.
Yep.
But no, that's an encouraging it's encouraging to hear that that story is possible.
Yeah. I can remember growing up and thinking like looking around, and there's this statistic of like patterns repeating, you know, generational cycles. If you're born into this, you obviously will usually stay in that. And all I can think was, I don't like the way this feels. Um,
Mhm.
I I want I don't like feeling scared all the time. I don't like feeling like I can't do anything and that there's no freedom. I don't like feeling like people pity me. Um, so I didn't drink until I got into my 20s. And even then it was because I was working at a bar and it wasn't excessive. Because I was like, addiction runs in my family. I'm not going to chance it. And then I can remember people being like, well, my dad was alcoholic, so that's why I drink. And I'm like, but you don't have to. You can be anything you want. You just have to choose to do it. And yeah, it might be hard, but you can either face the hard things and push through it, or complain about being in the same place for eternity. And
Mhm.
I don't want to be in the same place. I don't want my children to be in the same place. So that was one thing. And then wanting, because I was a teen mom, my oldest is going to be 19. I wanted her to know that she could accomplish anything. And that if she wanted to go to school, great. If she didn't want to, she wanted to do a trade, great. If she wants to be a world trotter that lives off the land, great. But know that all of these options are available to you, and that
Mhm.
we can do hard things, even though the first three didn't feel hard.
But I mean, it, it's so it's so hard to, as someone who's steeped in academia, it was a hard shift for me to go from, you have to go to college, you have to go get your master's, you have to do a doctorate, to realizing that those things aren't necessary, and I am doing them because I want to do them. I took 10 years between my first accidental master's, long story there that I'll probably tell 500 times on this podcast. But basically, my advisor in my undergrad told me, you're going to audition for this program because they need someone, and then you're going to do it. And it was paid for. It was a teaching assistantship. I wasn't going to turn that down. Um, but it definitely wasn't something I intended to do. But then I took 10 years off and was like, do I really want to get a doctorate? Do I really want to go farther with this, or do I just want to exist and live life? And eventually I decided to go back and do it again. But it was because I decided that was where I wanted to go and where I thrived the best. And I think, especially in the United States, we are so pushed into higher education so quickly and expected at the age of 18 to know what we want to do with the rest of our lives, which is wild. I'm 34 and I still have barely a clue of what I want to do. I have a general outline at this point, but like, really deciding those things at 18 is a crazy thing to put on a kid. It's crazy.
It is.
Um,
I won't. My daughter's taking a couple years off. She finished high school last year. And I told her throughout like her junior and senior year, you don't have to be on the pipeline, because she was really stressing. She's like, they have to do this and this, and they have to pick schools. And I'm like, you don't. You don't. I was like, I am living proof that you don't have to do it the traditional way, that you can pick and choose. And there's, different structures. I've always gone, with the exception of my first college, I went to schools that had a different like scheduling structure. So it was always one class at a time, because taking three classes and working full time and taking care of a kid, like I could feel my grades slipping and then feeling like a failure. So I switched to schools where they had one class at a time. It was usually 8 weeks to 12-week courses, just straight through. And I was like, that's an option. If you just want to focus on one thing, you can do that. But I want you to take time, because who you are today is not going to be who you are 6 months from now or a year from now. You're going to change your mind about things. And I said, and you're going to want to do reckless things, which is fine because you're young and you're supposed to, and that's how you learn. So don't feel like you have to rush into it if you know that you're not ready, because that is only going to feed that fear of failure. And then for some people, the fear of failure is a fire that ignites them to move forward, myself. But for some people, it buries them in a hole that they never want to come out of. So identifying the difference and understanding you don't have to join the pipeline to academics if you don't want to, if it's not right for you. I know there's been several people that have messaged me from my graduation videos saying that I've inspired them to go for, higher education or their masters or their doctorates. And they're in their 50s and they're in their 60s.
Mhm.
And they're like, I never even thought it was a possibility. And I love that. There's never a wrong time to do something for you, to explore something new. And the thing about like people who get their doctorates or their masters, we're technically lifelong learners. It's not
Mm.
like, okay, we mark that off the list and we're done learning. You get to that point because you love learning. So
Yeah.
even if you're shifting categories or interests, you're still the desire to learn is always going to be there. And I admire that. And I will always pour into that for people because the possibilities are endless. And I always tell people things that feel impossible um, are always possible. Look at the devices that we are talking on. If you would have told me this as a kid that this would exist, I would have been like, oh, that's sci-fi.
Yeah.
But here we are.
Yeah.
All right,
I
that was
mean,
really long.
thinking back to my undergrad, the professors that I had the most respect for were the ones that I was seeing in my classes as students. And I think that unlocked something in me to realize, oh, they're tenured. They're at the top of their game. They're going to be professors for the rest of their lives. And yet they're taking a class at my university and they're accruing more knowledge and they see this as something that they need to continue doing and enjoy doing. And like I'll joke every once in a while saying that's why I want to be a professor, so I can keep getting degrees for free and get paid to take degrees, is just so I can sit in on classes and learn more and more and uh broaden my horizons for the rest of my life. I don't see any degree as being terminal. I don't see any degree as being the end of the journey. Um, but I also think it's interesting that you're saying this and that this is kind of your life philosophy, because your topic for your dissertation is very non-traditional. Like the business structures you were talking about are not common business structures, at least currently in the United States, at least. Um, but it was so interesting for me opening up your dissertation and reading it, um because I grew up in Seattle and co-ops were everywhere in the 90s. Like and I could be wrong about what a definition of a co-op is, but we had co-op grocery stores, we had stores like REI that were employee owned, and Winco and Costco, and credit unions everywhere, like in Washington state. There's so many businesses that function because they're owned by the employees that run them. So it was a very familiar topic to me in some ways, but then also like thinking about it deeper was wild to me. How did you come to talking about and exploring cooperatives, and what are cooperatives?
So cooperatives are democratically owned business structures. So instead of you having a top-down model, it's a level playing field. Sometimes you have multiple levels, but it's essentially like a straight across the board. Everyone has a say. So when, say, they make record profits, everyone gets to decide, what are we going to do with that? Are we going to reinvest? Are we going to expand? Are we going to pool it into like a resource fund for like so that we can help other cooperatives develop, because there's cooperatives that literally that's their whole existence is to grow other cooperatives. And it was really the pandemic. It was going into a Winco because I lived in Seattle during the time. And I can remember it was the first store I've ever gone into where you had to bag your own stuff. And
Mm.
I was like, oh. And I just asked, I was like, why is that a thing? And they're like, because we're employee owned. So we the best way to streamline this is for us to just to cash people out and then for them to bag themselves. Otherwise, you're gonna it costs us more money and it costs you guys more money. This saves you guys money. And I was like, what is this? I'm like, you grew up hearing about co-op markets and union, like credit unions, but you don't actually think about the definition of those words or what those mean. And like doing my entertainment business degree, like you learn about business structure, but they vary. lightly glaze over that. Just like learning about what is it? Public benefit corporations. I was like, oh, why don't we have more of those? Because I don't like corporations. They're beholden to shareholders, not their customers and not the people that make the business run. And I think that's unethical to be like, we're going to make decisions that are best for the people that we can make money for versus the people that are making the money for those people. And for me, bleeding heart, I was like, that doesn't make sense. So learning about cooperatives, I was like, why don't they teach more of this? So like even in doing interviews with people from the United States, a lot of them are like, I had no idea that this existed. Or the struggle that they find themselves in when they try to bring members in is that most of them are used to like the order. So like I'm going to tell you what to do and you're going to do that and that's just it versus you have autonomy that for some people having that autonomy in such great doses is uncomfortable, so they back
Mm.
out of it. They're like, nope, this is not for me. I don't want to be in charge of anything. I want you to tell me what to do and then I want to leave. I don't want that. But then there's a lot of people that don't. They don't want to come in and be told how to, live their lives, told, oh, you can't take time off because we want you during this time to make us more money. Oh, you can't have any ideas that are similar to our business because we want to take that and own it for ourselves, but you can get a little percentage of it. So learning, like realizing that those type of business structures existed and being able to research them and see that in other countries it's prevalent, that that is their structure and that it's not in the United States. And I was like, oh, because capitalist sucks. Okay. Well, I was like, well, what makes them so successful? Because in the United States, small businesses took a big hit during COVID. And but Italy and Spain took a really, really hard hit in general because of COVID. However, their business sector survived it. Their cooperative sector survived it. And it's because they prioritized each other. They poured back into each other. It wasn't about making record profits. It was about keeping their communities going. And I was like, that's what we need. You have these, where I like to think of Target. They changed their Pride Month to be, what is it, unique. And obviously there's big backlash, but and there's people that are part of that community that work there that now feel alienated because they chose to change it based on someone else's perspective of what they want shown to the general public. In cooperatives, you don't have to do that. You can say no, these, like, every person in my business matters and it's our business. So collectively we're deciding that we're going to support these communities, and it doesn't matter if a government official is like, I don't like that, I want you to change that. It's our business.
Yeah.
So I have big feelings.
Yeah, no, and
But it was
it's
about giving power
interesting.
to the people.
Yeah, it's interesting because it makes me think of when I was working at Starbucks. They make it sound like they are a cooperative because when you start working there, as long as you're working 20 hours a week, you're given shares in the company. But it's not any kind of a majority share. You're just, here's a share, you're going to make some money off of it. But by doing that, they can say, no, look, you're part of the company, you're part of the structure, versus a company like Winco, where it's literally everyone in the company who works for the company has to vote on something in order for it to happen, because they're truly democratic. It's
Yes.
it, it's the most perfect definition of greenwashing, or of cooperative washing, that I think you could come up with, by in terms of how Starbucks runs itself. Um, but yeah, it's so it's so odd to me that the US doesn't have more of those businesses, because every time I've seen one, they seem to be doing so incredibly well. And like, I know I keep coming back to Winco, but it's because I have a lot of experience with Winco, because I went to undergrad in Eastern Washington, and Wincos are open 24 hours. Um, and so we would do like 3 a.m. Winco runs because we didn't want to go to bed. So we'd be like, let's go to the bulk food store and just like get a giant 5-pound bag of Andes mints. Or like so I have fond memories, but it's so, having so much experience with those businesses, it's extremely surprising that we don't make them more
More of
available
them.
and yeah, that we don't have more of them throughout the United States.
There has been, because of COVID, there has been an influx in them, which is why this particular subject was so important to cover, like the what makes them successful, what policies support them in Italy and Spain versus the United States, because you have like these little hotspots, like Colorado is starting to bloom with cooperatives. You
Mhm.
have them in New York. You don't really have them in the southern states because they see them as socialism, even though they have them, but it's solely for farming and for like electricity. But outside of that, they don't really support them. But you have these little hotspots like popping up. So I wanted to know, one, like my ultimate goal is to do research on how you can bring cooperatives to the entertainment industry because they don't exist there, with the caveat of like theater cooperatives. Those are now popping up, which is amazing. But um, I wanted to know, what that would look like, but you have to have a foundation. So if a big corporation sees a cooperative, starting to succeed, they're going to knock their feet out of under them. So you have to give them a strong foundation, and a strong foundation involves policies that support them, that makes it so that they can survive, weather the storms, and that they have the knowledge and tools to do that. But I wanted to know what works over in those countries that they were with able to stand or withstand COVID, um, and come out stronger on the other side versus why so many small businesses closed here. And I was like, okay. So like researching like all their policies, how the government supports them, how the different communities support them. I was like, you start to see those little things popping up. But the two things that I think need to happen to make it more successful is people need to talk about it. People need to know these businesses
Mm.
exist. A lot of people don't even know that it's a thing, that it's even an
Yeah.
option, that you don't have to try to start a business by yourself. A lot of people don't want to start a business by themselves because like, I don't want to do it all alone. I don't want to be in charge of everything. But if you start a cooperative, then you're not doing it by yourself. It's a
Mhm.
collective that's doing it, and it's a collective that has to care about other people. It takes away from our individuality of I have to be an island to succeed and prove myself. And because I'm indigenous and we're not islands, we're social people. We're village people who support each other and know that like if we're going out berry picking, that it's going to be not just for our household, but it's going to be for the village. If we're going out hunting, it's not going to be just for our household, it's going to be for the village, and it's going to be for the elders. And moving closer to that, people will realize, oh, we really don't have to do this by ourselves. So getting people educated on these structures and that they exist, and then finding and creating a transition for the people that are used to taking orders and are uncomfortable with autonomy, and like giving them a transition to go over that bridge to being comfortable having autonomy over their own time and their own money and the businesses that they want to be involved in. Um, so I'm hoping that my dissertation contributes to that
Yeah.
and helps educate people. And then we need, outside of that, like we need um, more lawyers that are knowledgeable in what cooperative structures are, and then more accountants, because the ones that we have right now, because of the influx of cooperatives, are severely overwhelmed. Like they have resources on their page for people to do self-help because they can't take on any more clients, which is
Yeah.
great because it means that again the sector is growing, but we want them to be fully supported. We don't want them to get the inspiration and then not have the tools to to sustain themselves.
Yeah. Something that really struck me both in your work and then also the book that you sent me was um it tickled my sociological mind because it made me start to think about the whole idea of communities and how um cooperatives seem to focus on this small like local government aspect of humans, that we work best when we are in small communities, um and and have done for thousands of years. Like humans have functioned best in small tribal communities. That's just how we existed until the industrial revolutions, when cities started growing and we became strongholds of millions of people in one place having to function together. um so it's interesting seeing this new way to kind of reform those smaller communities and get people to think about just the people directly around them again. um but then it also brought up questions in my mind about how, if 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 we're looking for ways to have government regulations that allow cooperatives to exist, how does a national government how, how does a national government help with those regulations for local communities? Because I know a lot of these laws tend to be at the state level.
Oh, I think it starts with a normalizing. Think of it like amending the Constitution. In order to amend the Constitution, you need so many states to have these things. So as we see more cooperatives pop up in different states, they get to reach out to their local governments and be like, hey, there's X amount of us, but we don't have the same support as small businesses. However, the money that we make is circled back into the, these little local economies. It's not like a big corporation where it's Walmart coming in and all of the local or all the money that they're making is going out to their headquarters and not being circulated back into the local economy. So what can we do to support the growth of these new businesses that are cooperatives that are investing in, the library or the parks, or you know what I mean? So it's one, getting them spread out enough that they can essentially protest their local governments for recognition. Like, we exist, see us. And that's starting to happen. There's a couple different coalitions that are in the United States that have formed that are trying to seed those opportunities in different states that are willing to hear it. There's also Congress members that are trying to pass legislation that is currently just sitting on desks. But I think
Yeah.
it's getting the education out there and the development of these cooperatives to petition your local government to say, hey, we exist, acknowledge us. And then
Mhm.
once you see that, once you have, oh, there's 36 states that have these and they're growing in numbers, we probably should have a national thing to support them because they are causing local economies to grow, and it's not just money being shipped out of state. That is the approach that I think would be best, in my opinion.
Well, then in your dissertation, you were also talking about, you were comparing the United States to Spain and Italy. What was it about those two countries in particular that made those case studies important?
Specifically, the fact that they withstood COVID,
Okay.
because small businesses generally last, a year to 5 years, right? That's like their breaking window of whether or not they're going to be a established business for a long time. With cooperatives, it's like 6 months to 2 years in the United States, but in Spain and Italy, it's 5 to 7 years. That, you, if you can make it that long, then you're going to do great and you're going to keep going. So understanding why that was and how they were supported, they have like national mandates that, this much of your percentage of profits need to go into this fund that helps develop other cooperatives and or helps established traditional businesses convert to cooperatives. And that's how they fund the growth of more cooperatives there and keep them floating during hard times. And I think that's amazing. And then they have the Mondragon Corporation, which is the biggest co-op in the world. Like, there's over
Mhm.
80 co-ops underneath their umbrella, and they take pride in ensuring that nobody fails and that everyone's voice is heard, and that even the smallest community where you don't have a bunch of foot traffic from tourists is still taken care of. And I was like, oh, because to me that reminds me of indigenous culture where we look out for each other. If a village was sorry, there's a cat coming every time. If there's a village that we know is suffering, like they're just having a hard winter and they don't have all the resources, and we had a stockpile of things that we could share with them, regardless of not if we're from different tribes, we're going to help them
Hmm.
because we all come from the land and we all need to support each other. So that's how cooperatives in those two countries operate. Like, yeah, we're technically opponents, even if we're selling the same thing, but I want you to still survive because there are people that you are servicing that are part of our community, and we value our community because our community is
Hmm.
what keeps things going. Um, but that's not the case here. It's if you see someone else selling a product that's similar to yours and they're doing well, you generally find ways to undercut them. If you're a big
Yeah.
corporation and you see little mom and pop places doing well, you either one want to buy them out so that they're not taking your business, or two, you want to buy them out so that you can turn them into a franchise, but still not take your business. And I don't think it should be that way because that keeps the power in a very small percentage of hands and leaves the rest of us as cattle working for them. And I've always thought since I was a child that it was weird that we spend so much time working and not enough time just living and being. Like
Hmm.
you essentially get up 30 minutes to an hour before you have to be to work to get dressed to go to work. You drive the 20 minutes to work. You're there for 8 to 9 hours. And then you're going to go home or go to the grocery store after, buy the stuff. So your whole existence for like revolves around work, except for those 2 days off that you have to recoup. And as you get older, those 2 days off don't feel like enough.
No, they don't.
And it just, I'm like, why is that a thing? And then you have to spend almost your whole life to be able to say, okay, I worked 60 years of my life. Now I can rest. But the cost of
Hmm.
living has gone up. So I have to stay in the working game because I can no longer afford to retire. And I don't, it was never meant to be that way. And that's
Yeah.
another thing that you get to do at cooperatives. You get to choose what type of healthcare your company is giving out to their employees. You get to choose what kind of retirement plans there are, and if there's childcare included. And what's beautiful about that is that's all rolled into the cost of running the business.
Hmm.
I don't think you should have to pay a bunch of money out of pocket to be able to get the clothes for work, to go to work, to pay for childcare so that you can go to work. That's just silly to me that that all should be rolled into one thing. Because if you are giving your blood, sweat, and tears to make someone else money, you need to benefit from it somehow. And it's not by working your whole life away for them. And I think cooperatives fix that. And it shows that in those countries because they value their people. And it's not so individualistic over there compared to here. Not that I
Yeah,
want to live over there.
absolutely. I mean, I left the US for a reason, but no, and that also makes me think of situations like copyright law and patent law where you're setting up this way to make sure that no one else can make money off of your ideas, which on the one hand sounds fantastic because it means that you're going to be profiting off of the things that you've created, but on the other hand, it 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 hamstrings anyone else who might have had a similar enough idea that it would get cut off by those laws. It something I've been seeing a lot on social media, especially with small businesses and individual creators who are hand making things and like selling them on Etsy and things, are people that would comment and say, "Oh well, I could make that at home. Why would I buy that from you?" And it always makes me think, well, yeah, you could, but you're not going to. So let someone who
Right?
wants to make it. And there's always going to be someone who's willing to purchase something because they don't have the tools to make it, even though they could. Like everyone could
Or even the
paint
talent.
a jacket or the talent. Like you could spend all of that time to learn how to do something and then eventually make it. Or you could see that someone is already doing it and say, hey, I have the funds, I could buy that. And that takes a community mind to be able to see that people are able to do those things and function within a group. um and I mean, at an even larger level, you look at things like how the EU functions, and like a decade ago when Greece needed a bailout, they were like, okay, we'll bail out Greece because we know that if the terms were reversed, they would do the same. Um, and yeah, it's just so fascinating to me that the US is so individualistic in a way, but then they expect big things from the government and they expect the government to help them, but they're not as interested in giving back to the federal government. It's like there's an umbrella,
Yeah,
but
they want,
you want the umbrella to keep you dry, but you don't want to have to pay for the upkeep on the umbrella.
right? Or they want to pay into the government, but they don't want that money to benefit other people. They only want it to benefit
Yeah.
themselves. And I'm like, but why? Like how I would I would never want a child to starve. If you want to use my dollars to pay for free lunches for children, please pay for free lunches for children. If you want to use it for homeless people so they have housing, use it for them. If you want to give
Mhm.
them free food and clothing, give it to them. That's what I would like my tax dollars to go to, not, cuts for people who wouldn't even notice $100 missing from their bank account if it hit them over the head. That's it just
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense. And the way that the US has essentially made competition the way of life. Like you have to, this
Mhm.
person's your competition, that person's your competition. No one else is my competition but myself. I've gotten to
Yeah.
where I am because an older version of me was someone I was trying to rise above. And I'm going to continue doing that. My username was birthed out of the idea that, yeah, you could probably reach the mountaintop all by yourself, but you're going to get there a lot faster if you work together with someone else. And the idea that like we're all beautifully human, we're all, beautifully flawed, but together, when we work together, we're going to rise. We're going to
Yeah.
make it to the mountaintop together. And there's no reason that like you getting there any faster is going to make your life like better.
Yeah.
If everyone's going to reach it no matter what, why not just go together? And
There was
I,
in go for
oh no, you're
it. No, in the Birchall book, the other work that you sent to me, there was a quote that
Mhm.
struck me where he said, "The lower the level of inequality, the larger the share of the benefits of growth that accrue to the poor." And it's so it frustrated me that it took me a second to figure out what he was talking about.
Okay.
Because I'm a product of the society in which I grew up, and that society taught me that you just have to work and do it for yourself, and you're constantly just making yourself better to the detriment of other people around you. That's how we get the idea of the CEO that doesn't care, and we get the idea of corporations that are just doing it to line their pockets. When this author is saying that if you focus on making sure the poor are lifted up and are able to grow their opportunities, that can only help everyone else. Um and going along with that, he also said it would be a mistake to assume that poverty meant ignorance or lack of pride. And it just the this reminder that wealthy people aren't necessarily smart, and poor people aren't necessarily stupid, and they're not in those situations because of anything that they did to themselves, but they're a product of the world around them that has put them into those places, and there are things that we can do to fix that.
I always, when I see people use the mentality of, oh, well, they just need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps because look what this person did. You are glorifying someone who essentially Huckleberry Finn to other people.
Mhm.
Like, oh, he tricked them. So therefore he deserves all the money that he gets. No,
Yeah.
because he tricked people into doing the work for him and to give all the money, with the exception of maybe 1%, back to him because it was his
Mhm.
idea. And that's silly because my favorite analogy, because I think you should honor everyone in a business regardless of what role they're in, is the old clocks. you can't have the exact same size gear to make a clock work. There are tons of different size gears, and one
Mm,
rotation of one could be 10 rotations of another. But every single piece of that is what makes time run on time.
mm,
So you have to appreciate every single piece of it. And to think that, a janitor isn't worthy because they're cleaning up sewage or dirt or trash from a CEO, who has the biggest office in the building is just silly, because it is those people, it is the people who answer the phones and bag the groceries and stock the shelves that make it possible for everything else to run. So we need to honor those people. And when you learn that you have to honor those people because you would not be where you are, then you can take self out of it and turn it into community, because you realize
yeah.
that we literally all need each other.
Yeah.
And that's, I loved I loved that about the book and how it highlighted it, because I needed something to tell me that I wasn't crazy. People tell me that I'm a
Mm,
bleeding heart and that I wouldn't be good at business. I wouldn't be good at management or leadership, because I care too much about the people and not about the profits. But my saying is always, if you pour into the people, the profits will come.
mhm.
If you take care of your people and make sure that they are well, the quality of work that they do for you will also increase.
Yeah.
Your turnover will go down and therefore you will save more money.
Mhm.
So I don't think it's wrong to care about the people, because people is the reason why business is successful. It is not the person at the top,
Yeah.
because half the
And
time the person at the top doesn't know how to do the job themselves.
well, and it's such a revolutionary way of thinking about business and also academia, because in academia, we're taught that those who came before us are smarter than us and that we're just taking up a torch from them and we have to listen to them. And they knew how to do things, so you can't change how things are done. But it's understanding more so that academia is so much more similar to apprenticeships and to people sharing their knowledge so that the next generation can build on that knowledge and can go further into it. Like the an example that comes to mind is thinking about I always think in terms of music because that's what half of my life has been so far. And we wouldn't have people like Stephen Sondheim if Oscar Hammerstein hadn't taken him in when his dad died and taught him everything he knew. Like we're talking about the top of the top composer of musical theater at the time, Oscar Hammerstein, who had so many hits on his hands and was considered the best of the best, taking in this little teenager who had written one musical that was really, really bad, but he saw something in it and said, no, 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 let me work with you on this. And then we got the world's best ever writer and composer of musical theater from it, who then went on to basically become a philosopher on stage for us and teach us how to exist with each other through music and through lyrics. But you wouldn't have had that if Oscar Hammerstein had said, no, 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 capitalism. I don't want someone competing for Tonys with me, and I don't want people competing for Pulitzer Prizes with me. I'll let this kid who has promise stay over there and figure it out on his own, because if I help him, it's not going to benefit me. No, no, no. We we can't exist like that. We wouldn't have society if we existed like that.
Yeah, everything is always supposed to expand and move forward. It must be built upon. I Whatever I create, if I reach my limit, then I want someone else to take the reins and I want them to make it better. Because I think about medicine, you always want medicine, you want things to evolve. Um, the fact that there is, like, I'm on Ozempic, the fact that that exists is
Mhm.
amazing, that I can take a shot once a week and not have to worry about my insulin or my weight fluctuating or having a period because I have PCOS. And years ago, that wasn't a thing. The idea of that wasn't a thing.
Mhm.
And they were fine with, you just got to take this medication, or um, stop eating this type of thing, not realizing or not caring that everyone's bodies are different and that our genetic makeup is so vastly different that something that works for you is not going to work for me. Or, some people can walk a mile a day and stay super thin, or eat all of the things and stay super thin, i.e., my husband. And then some people can watch every single calorie intake and still, week after week, gain a pound.
Mm-hmm.
So things must continue to be expanded because why stop?
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason, we want it's silly. We want to get to the stars. But if we stopped at making cars, then we would never get to the stars.
Mm-hmm.
So I love the idea that we are not so much in competition, but we are inspired by other people's work, and that we see, that's a really great concept. We can make it better. And then the person seeing that other person make it better, oh, I never would have thought of that. We can also do this, and then expanding upon it more versus, no, you cannot succeed at making something better than me than what I made because I thought of it first and registered it first. It's
Yeah.
just, it feels like it's holding society back, and I would rather be propelled forward.
We need fewer Edisons out there.
Yes.
um, do you think that in how do I word this? In specifically in the United States version of capitalism, do you think it is possible for us to grow in that direction, in the direction of more cooperatives? And if so, how?
I actually think that you're going to see an even bigger increase in cooperatives in the next 10 years because of um because of COVID. I know I keep coming back to that, but we had a time where groceries were astronomical. People, we weren't allowed to leave our houses, we weren't allowed to do things. So we had to pay. We had no option but to pay the prices that were presented to us. And the corporations are like, oh, we can make them pay whatever we want. It's not about supply and demand anymore. It's just whatever we want to make. And no matter what, they're going to need these things. So they're going to pay it,
Mhm.
while also being like, we reached record profits, but to make record profits bigger than last year, we need to lay off X amount of people so that it doesn't cut into this. And it was the CEO of, was it Kellogg's, that told people to eat cereal for dinner. It's
Mhm.
that is going to continue to spark people moving away from these big corporations and wanting to, make their own things and start their own businesses. um, and that's just, it's only going to keep going, especially with the people that we have in charge of this country right now. It only pushes people to be like, oh, I can't rely on the government to actually do what they're supposed to do, which is, invest in infrastructure, make sure that we can run our businesses and have good healthcare. I have to do this. We have to do this. We have to care. And so you see this pulling back. I've seen several videos of like farmers who voted for this, who didn't realize that they voted for this, who are
Mhm.
losing their businesses that have been in their families for generations because they thought it was going to be something different. And realizing that they need their community, that they can't
Yeah.
stand as an island by themselves. And I'm watching it happen, and it makes me giggle every time I see a new one pop up because I'm like,
Mhm.
join
Well,
me.
and I mean that specific industry, it was especially nefarious because I grew up as the grandchild of a farmer and a rancher, and my grandpa was a lifelong Republican, but that was because he grew up in a time when Republicans were so concerned with things that aided agriculture. Like the way that the Republican Party functioned in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s focused more on helping farmers and those rural areas. So then to have someone come along then as the Republican Party has shifted and
Mhm.
co-opt that and say, no, this is mine now, this is what it stands for now. I think a lot of the agricultural industry got duped easily because he was saying all the right things and all of the right rhetoric to make them think that it was a return to that Republican Party
That
that was
time.
so agriculturally minded, and then taking power and them realizing, oh no, this is not what we voted for. And they're not horrible people. They were just duped because the system used to work for them in that specific way and it no longer does. Um, and especially in that industry that is so reliant on community and so reliant on migrant workers and so reliant on these things that are being stripped away by the dozens every single day.
Every
Uh,
day.
it's 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 really, yeah, it's really sad to see the way in which people were lied to.
Yes. So
But
I do think because of that, there's going to be an even more influx of cooperatives popping up and more hubs popping up. Um, and it's solely because of the greed of the 1% and people realizing that they could legally take advantage of their workers and other people and then their consumers. And you're going to see people say, I don't like that. I don't want that. I want to value people and create more cooperatives. Something I didn't know until getting into like the data collection portion of this study was that there are cooperative construction companies.
hmm,
And I was like, oh, that I never would have thought of that. But there are, and they're developing more and more, mostly to like break away from the union because of the strict rules of the union and having to work for businesses that don't align with their values. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. And which, led me to the coffee cooperatives are obviously a thing, and then their stories, and then the theater cooperatives. And I'm like, oh, they're hitting every industry, and I love it. So you're definitely going to see a lot more of them. I know in Colorado, by itself, in the last like 3 years, you've seen like a 400% increase in cooperatives in that state.
wow.
And they have more events, they're getting out and talking to more people, they're converting small businesses into cooperatives, and I think it's amazing. And it makes it so that, one, it gives these businesses, like the small businesses, the ability to have a legacy if they don't have children to pass their business down to, or if they're no contact with somebody. It gives them longevity and the ability to keep like-minded people within that structure, and I think that's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
also teaching the children of those like people that you do need a community, and this is what community looks like, and this is what you can build, and it doesn't have to be in this town or that town, it can be anywhere. And I think that's important because I can remember the story of, you go to college, you get a career, and you have to stay in that career always. And that was the mindset of people that were born in like the
Mm,
40s, 50s, and 60s. You can't do that now.
yeah.
I mean, like with the exception of like maybe being a doctor or an engineer, you can't really just pick one thing. There's always going to be ebbs and flows, and that's okay. Our attention
Yeah.
span for things is also shifting and changing. But I love that in cooperatives you can have like rotating roles so that you're not
Mm,
losing the younger generation to boredom
yeah.
because they're understanding the full spectrum of what makes their business successful.
Well, and it also makes the business stronger because then you have people who are able to experience all of those different roles. I'm constantly talking about this in every single job that I've ever had, where I'm just like, say I'm on night shift somewhere. I have no idea what is necessary for the day shift unless I take a day shift at some point. Um, or I have no idea what's necessary for the floor worker if I'm constantly in the back room unless I take one of those shifts and get experience. Or on a broader level, that's why so many people have been saying everyone needs to work retail at some point in their lives because
Yes.
people don't have that experience. They don't understand how hard it is to help people in that situation unless you've been in that situation and had someone
Yes.
arguing with you over whether or not you serve a certain food item. Like you every having that rotation can only better the situation for everyone.
Right. And it also gives you a respect for other people's jobs. I've
Yeah.
always said that I can't judge someone on how they do something if I don't know how to do their job. Like
Yeah.
if I've proven myself that I can do it better than you, and you know how to do it right and you choose not to, oh, I'm going to judge you.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
going to give you the side eye. But if I know that that job is specifically hard and you're doing the best that you can, I'm not going to be like, oh, hurry up or do better, because I know what it takes to do the job. And that type of respect, I think, coils any tensions that tend to rise, because we can look and be
Mhm.
like, oh, well, the receptionist didn't answer the phone. The receptionist has 10 people sitting in front of her that she has to check in. You're right. She didn't answer the phone because she prioritized the people that were directly in front of her versus being on the phone. And then those people yelling at her feeling ignored. But you don't
Yep.
know that unless you're up there doing that job. And
Yeah.
so I do think it's important for people to rotate. And I think that I really do think it's going to help the Gen Z crowd, because
Hmm.
they are the ones that are just ready to be like, I'm over this, and then just walk off, which, more power to you. Your time is your own and it's a valuable thing. But also for the people that you just left in the lurch, that really sucks.
Yep.
So let's find ways to keep people engaged. And it also teaches them like independence without individuality, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Because you can do all of these things and that's amazing, and that's your confidence levels are going to go up, but also you now understand that it takes all of these different things to make this one thing work.
Yeah. I wish I could have you on for another hour because I feel like I would also love to dig into the why different parts of the country are more interested in and seem to be fostering these things more than other parts of the country, because I have my ideas, and I feel like the history of each of these quadrants surely plays into how willing they are to have cooperatives around them. But um
100%.
but I think it's time for a couple audience questions.
Okay.
So the questions we have today are from at justin.0.g on Instagram. And the first question for you is, what is your opinion on baby bonds or other wealth redistribution policies such as UBI?
I don't know enough about it to have an opinion on it.
That's fair.
um, I think if we can move towards anything that redistributes wealth like equitably, that we should do that. I don't think that we should do anything more to help the people at the top that have cut the rings off the ladder,
Mm,
because that's essentially what glorifying, the wealthiest people. And something that, and this is again, this is a bleeding heart in me. I don't give my attention or money to people or businesses that do not invest in other people. Like if all you do is act, which nothing wrong with that, but if all you do is act, but you want all of the attention and respect in the world and everyone's just falling over you, but you don't do anything to enrich other people's lives, to me, you're not worthy of my time or attention.
mhm.
So any kind of investment that we can do to lift up other people, I think that we should invest in, even if it is a slow process or isn't going to advance wealth in the way that we would like. Because, a lot of times you're like, well, I want to invest in this because it's going to make me richer and it will eventually trickle down to them. No, it needs to be something that is evenly distributed to people so that everyone has the chance to sit at the table and have a say and have a roof over their head.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've proven at this point that Reagan was wrong about basically everything.
Yes, absolutely.
And then the second question is, how can we start making more policies that focus on benefiting the common people? And what are the barriers to good policy making, and can they be resolved?
Lobbying is the barriers. It's You have big corporations that lobby against the people. As soon, and this is why, again, I researched the policies in Spain and Italy versus the US, because I wanted to know what was done to support them versus here. Because I know as soon as you have any kind of footing that supports the common people, that there's going to be someone that's like, oh no, this is taking money away from us. So we're going to pour this much resources into blocking this, into saying that this
Mm,
is unconstitutional or this isn't right, or that it's unfair in some way. And So taking out the ability for big corporations to pour their money into things and lobby for whatever benefits them over the people, and creating incentives for people to realize that, yes, you like Coca-Cola, but Coca-Cola likes to, run these factories at this rate and it pollutes the atmosphere this much versus maybe going with another new company that is a cooperative that has found a way not to put so much emissions out. And understanding that it's going to be an uphill battle and that it's going to be uncomfortable, but that uncomfortability isn't going to last forever. That as soon as you push past the fear that you're not going to be successful, you will see the amount of people that are standing with you to make it happen. So going after lobbyists is going to be the first step. And then talking to your representatives and putting people in that can't be bought off,
Mhm.
because you could see all of their records, right, who they're getting donations from. And I always look for the ones that are getting grassroots donations because they really are for the people. And it's not, I'm trying to rub elbows with this person because they know that person and they're going to make me rich. Another thing I think would benefit that is stopping, and I know that this has been brought up, I don't know when it's going to go through, but stopping insider trading from in the government, because what they're going to do, because they have all the information, is they
Yeah.
know what's happening before anyone else does, and they can slip that in whoever's ear. So lobbying as a community for those policies to take out lobbyists and then to stop insider trading would give us a better footing on getting the policies that are actually for the people versus for the corporations, because right now everything is balanced for the corporations and not for the people.
Yeah. I grew up in a household that was distinctly anti-lobbyist. Always has been. It's uh, that's actually a good question in terms of your study. Do Spain and Italy allow lobbyists? Like, is it legal in
um,
Spain and Italy?
to a degree, but not to the detriment of cooperatives, because that would
Got
be
it.
against the people. And um, there are stipulations in the policies for the establishment of cooperatives that it has to be good for the environment, it has to be good for the local community, and it has to give back in some way. Like it has to be an all-around eco-friendly thing. That it
Mm,
cannot just be, you can't get the benefits of getting financial help and support from the government if you are not actually helping and supporting the community.
got
And
it.
it's vastly different than here. Like you get these corporations and banks that get bailouts from
Mm,
the American people when they make poor choices, but you don't get the same for the American people who are just struggling to get by.
yeah. Yeah,
So I think that was the biggest difference,
lobbying is such a nefarious thing. I don't
right?
get
Because
it.
all you're doing is paying for a voice
Yep.
and saying that my voice is louder because I happen to have more pretend money. I think money is stupid altogether. I cannot wait for the Star Trek life.
Well, and it does. This episode is definitely going to come out, I think, after this election. But in New York, they're currently voting for mayor right now, and the two choices are Andrew Cuomo, who is former disgraced mayor who is in the pockets of billionaires and has and knows Donald Trump personally, and all of these really terrible business decisions and life decisions, versus a man named Zoran Mamdani, who his entire campaign has been funded by people and by the community. Um, in fact, he topped out the amount that a campaign can raise in New York purely off of individuals within the
Grassroots.
community, completely grassroots, completely. I think it's like $8 million or something they're allowed to spend on a campaign, completely grassroots, no corporations or businesses.
I love that.
And he's currently beating Cuomo in the polls. So we'll see how it actually ends up shaking out. But it's so exciting because it's someone who isn't going to be in anyone's pocket if he gets elected to be mayor of New York, like one of the
I
most
love
important
that.
mayoral elections in the United States. And he wouldn't be in anyone's pocket, in literally anyone's pocket. So it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out, because it would be a completely new thing for the US to see that modeled. And if it goes well, then it
I have faith
bodes
that it's
well
going to
for
go
other
well.
races. Oh, yeah.
I love that especially after this weekend, like we saw the turnout of the American people. So
Yeah,
I think regardless of how glim it looks, the tides are shifting,
they
and
sure
I'm ready
are.
for it.
Me too. And that means it's time for our synthesis questions. So these are the questions that I ask every single person, and they're rapid fire. So I don't want you to think too much about the answers. I just
Okay.
want whatever comes to mind. So question number one: what is your typical executive dysfunction and or rest day activity?
Um, it's watching the little like telenovela clips. It's like little shorts. Like every clip is like 7 minutes, but it tells like a soap opera story from Japan. It's just so disconnected from my world that I'm like, I'll sit in my office for like an hour and just watch like 6 episodes and like, okay. Um, Also, I need to, if I want to focus, I need two different things like stimulating different parts of me. So I'll have music playing on my Echo, and I'll usually have like a TikTok just playing in the background. I don't know why that is the chaos that helps me just zone in, but it is. I think it's because it mimics like the interruptions that I get from my children all the time when I'm working. That I work best at being like, but I need to get this thought out type of thing.
Mm. So that actually leads into question number two, which is, what is your favorite setting for working on your research?
Um, Pajamas with 90s music, either an amp or a really large cup of coffee, and it needs to be between like 4:30 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. because the world is still sleeping just enough that I can have all of my things but it not get interrupted, and it feels like I'm by myself. I have a picture of like sitting on a cloud in the universe and it's just me and my devices. Um and I don't know why that's what works, but that's like my
Mhm.
setting. And then if I really need, and this is silly, I know it is. If I really need to retain the information that I'm going to then regurgitate out later, I need headphones in my ear to listen to it as an audiobook, and I need to be baking.
Mm.
So
Ooh.
I bake so much. My neighbors love it because they get everything. But it just I don't it's like the process of like knowing what the recipe is helps me retain each thing as I'm listening to it.
Interesting. That's
I'm a
really
weird
fascinating.
person.
Okay, now question three. What is one thing an advisor has told you that has stuck with you? And this can be good or bad.
Ooh, um, that you're gonna change your mind. Very first class I took for my doctorate, he was just like, I know that this is a couple years away, but you need to think about what your subject or what your study is going to be, and that know that you're going to change your mind. That what you choose today is not going to be what you land on. And then the other part to that was you need to pick something you're curious about but not invested in. So
Mm.
pick like, because if you're invested in it, then you've already decided how it's going to go, and your mind is automatically going to look for evidence to prove that. But if you're curious about why something is, your that scope widens, and then you look for all of the possible answers of why this could be. Did you get an owie? Did you get an owie? Can I kiss it? I'm so sorry. Okay. You want to sit with me a second?
Hey,
Mommy's always on the clock.
uh, exactly. And that chaos, it helps.
But yeah, it was the definitely the you're going to change your mind, but also be curious because you'll get frustrated if you are invested in something and then you don't get the answer that you want. But you're always going to be happy when you oh, wow, I never thought that was going to be that, or I had suspicion that that could be a thing, but who knew? And I that helped guide my research and picking things, because I felt frozen in time when they're like, yeah, you need to pick something now, and I'm like, it's like 2.5 years away before I have to even remotely start that, and they're like, yeah,
Yeah.
trust me.
Yeah.
So that
Uh,
still sticks with me.
and then question
I
number 4, if you could choose any other area of research, what would you choose and why?
uh, I want to know, and I probably will do this because I'm a lifelong learner. I want to know the benefits of dance for healing, specifically like working through
Mm.
grief, releasing trauma, like using dance as a form of like therapy to release things that you don't realize you're still holding in your body. I was a dancer from like 14 to 26. I love dance. It was my creative outlet. Um, and I know that like anytime I was feeling trapped or broken, that I could turn to dance and feel better, but I could
Mm.
never really understand why. So that is one of those things that's on my list that I would love to dive into.
That's so cool. Who is one other academic whose research you really admire?
Ooh, so it's um he's not well known. He's a doctor, and it's I know him personally, but he was one of the people that encouraged me to go for a doctorate. And he's a doctor outside of Alaska, and he discovered a new strand of chicken pox. I think
Ooh.
they're called Alaska pox. And it was discovered in 2012 in rural Alaska. He was the first person to have a patient come in and be treated, and they had no idea what it was. So then he went into a deep dive and discovered that it was a new strand, technically ancient strand that has lived in like the permafrost in Alaska, but that was the first person to they've discovered to be infected by it. Um,
Oh, that's
and to
crazy.
create a vaccine for it. Isn't that crazy? But it was like, you could be in a place where, girls, can you stop, please? Thank you. You can be in a place where um everything kind of feels new, because in the realm of like history, Alaska has like the youngest history, for America, because we're like the second to last state to be purchased. Um, but that you can still find ancient things that are going to affect people and discover. Like you're always going to be able to discover something. And trusting yourself and not being like, oh, it's just a fluke. Like dive into it, and that idea um, is what encouraged me to explore my curiosity of like, could I do a master's degree? Could I do a doctorate degree? Um, and anytime I have a thought like that, I explore it now because of him, and because of that discovery that he made, and knowing that it could lead to something greater, or it could inspire someone else.
That's amazing. Okay, last 2 questions. What is a
You're good.
question you've never been able to answer?
Oh, a question I've never been able to answer. This is super personal, and that is how I'm still a kind person despite the life that I've lived. I honestly get asked it all the time. They're like, "How are you so bubbly? Like, how do you care so much?" My husband laughs at me because sometimes people will say something to me online, and I just want to be like, "Grr, mean words," and then I'll like be typing it out, and then I'll just delete it because I'm like, "But it's not going to change anything. It's not going to make them better. It's definitely not going to make me better." And like, I don't want to make other people feel how they've made me feel. Um,
Mm,
but I can't really pinpoint why I choose to still be a bubbly ball of sunshine despite the darkness in the world that has been thrown at me. I think
yeah.
I just might be a pure ball of sunshine. That just might be all of my ingredients.
You know, that's a good thing. And then the last question. What font do you wish you could present your research in?
Ooh, hold on, baby. Um, this is silly. I don't know what it's called, but do you remember Goosebumps? Like
Yeah.
the show? That font. I don't know why, but
Just
it
gooey and
tickles my brain
drippy.
every time yes. It's like oozing with knowledge. And that's what I think about like when I write, whether it's for academics or for fiction, it's just oozing with details. It's oozing with things that you didn't know before. So
Mm,
to me, that's the best representation of anything that I write. And I just think it would be like, yeah, that's what you're getting into. It's going to be sticky. You're going to learn way more than you thought you were going to, and you might even like
I love that. Well,
it.
thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk to me. This has been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to spend
Thank
more
you for
time
having me.
reading. Of course, I'm going to spend more time reading your dissertation because I didn't have a chance to like read it all in depth. But
Is it a
I'm
goosebumps font? You're welcome.
I'll copy it and then paste it and change it into that font and see how that goes. But thank you again, and we will talk to you all later. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Wasn't that episode just so encouraging to know that you don't have to do things the traditional way in order for them to work out? From learning about Dr. Wagner's non-traditional beginnings and coming into academia, quote unquote, late according to traditional standards, to looking at businesses from an employees up way instead of a CEO's down direction. This whole episode just really encourages me that I don't have to think the way that we've always been thinking, that there's always room for improvement, there's always ways to grow outside of the traditional norms of society. So thank you so much to Dr. Wagner for being a guest on this episode, and thank you so much for listening. If you would like to support the podcast, you can follow us on our socials. On Instagram, that's at HypothesisPod and at Ira A. McIntosh. Or on TikTok, you can follow us at The Gay Ethnographer. You can also find us on YouTube at The Gay Ethnographer. There you'll find the videos of the episodes and some shorts taken from each of those episodes. You can also find the video, the audio, and the articles discussed in the podcast on my Substack, and that's iramcintosh.substack.com. If you would like to submit your own question to a future episode for my guests and myself to answer, you can send those on Instagram. You can send us an email at podcasthypothesis@gmail.com, or you can send in a voice note on SpeakPipe. That's speakpipe.com/hypothesispodcast, speakpipe.com/hypothesispodcast, and leave us a message of 30 seconds or so asking whatever you'd like to ask. It can be about academia, it could be about life, you can be silly and ask us what our favorite color is, you can, whatever. Feel free to submit any kind of question to us in any of those ways. And of course, please subscribe, rate, and review, and share with your friends. We're available everywhere you listen to podcasts. That's Apple, that's Google, Spotify, iHeart. Anywhere you listen to podcasts is where you will find us. So please subscribe, rate, review, and share with everyone around you. Let's fight misinformation together. Have a wonderful day and go read a book.